Hello, my name is Lloyd Brooks, and I would like to welcome you and thank you for tuning in to a brief summary of our paper. Now, before we get started, we would like to play you a brief clip that we believe will help provide some context to the nature of our study.
Port-au-Prince is a city roughly the size of Chicago, and in about 30 seconds, half of all of the buildings were gone or no longer safe to enter. 10% of the population was killed, 20% of the government employees were killed, and more than half of the population was left homeless. So we're talking about somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million people sleeping in the street. Port-au-Prince is
Now, in this testimonial, Ben Krause, a disaster relief professional, presents a real account of just how traumatic and demanding disaster response situations can be. In addition, later in the full video, he also states that given the nature of disaster response, it is often an exercise of relief workers choosing the least worst options available in a limited time frame, and that failures in this context often arise from a lack of collaboration, communication, and coordination. As such, we included this testimonial because it truly underscores a foundation and motivation of our study, the influence of trauma exposure on internal integration. In line with the testimonial, previous research has highlighted the importance of integration and relief worker behaviors as drivers of disaster relief outcomes. But what has been sort of overshadowed in our discipline, specifically in this context, is the importance of mental health. For instance, as you can see in some quotes we gather from disaster relief workers, trauma exposure is prevalent and constantly weighing on these workers, impacting their work and everyday lives. As such, the primary aim of this study was to investigate the relationship between the two, trauma and integration, while also highlighting mechanisms that may lie between these relationships, such as cooperative and commitment behaviors, and also investigate mechanisms that organizations can utilize to help address the potential influences of trauma exposure, particularly that of emotional support from supervisors. We informed these research questions using a scenario-based experimental design with both vignette and photo treatments, where we recruited a subject pool of 300 actual disaster relief workers, and our analysis included both the Preacher and Hayes mediation and moderation testing, as well as polynomial testing. But perhaps the most interesting result is from our moderated polynomials related to supervisor support, in which supervisor support that was viewed as more callous and direct turned out to be the best buffer against the negative effects of trauma, followed by that of a more empathetic form of support. And even more interesting is both forms of support turned out to be better than offering no support at all. The managerial implications derived from this work primarily center around the fact that trauma exposure both deters and motivates behavior simultaneously. Specifically, it decreases a relief worker's willingness to cooperate and integrate among themselves, while motivating or reinforcing their motivations toward their disaster relief organization. This ties directly into our next point, that more onus should be placed on the psychological well-being of relief workers in terms of their cooperative behaviors, and that while organizational commitment is essential, the cooperative nature of relief workers can be severely damaged in response to trauma, and that inability or unwillingness to develop or maintain relationships may hinder organizations over time. Finally, while we recognize that avenues of formal support such as counseling are instrumental for relief workers, they are often relegated to post-deployment initiatives. As such, this paper highlights that informal sources of support, such as an informal conversation with a supervisor following a traumatic event, can help mitigate potential adverse behavioral outcomes during disaster responses, providing organizations and managers with a timely avenue to further help their workers continue to provide aid and relief at high levels. On behalf of my co-authors and myself, I want to thank you again for tuning in to this brief summary of our paper. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a wonderful day.